Hello everybody and welcome back to the Quilters Apothecary. Today what we're doing is we are doing a crop at the bottom of an edge to edge. We are on Pro Stitcher version 537 and I got a special request to do this. Now I want to say that this is also on the Pro Stitcher Edge to Edge the movie on our YouTube channel, but I've had a few people that say, can you just do the bottom crop? Separately, because so they don't have to try to figure out how to go all the way to the end of a video. And so that's what we're doing right now. So what I'm doing is I've completed this quilt. I am down at the bottom and I only have room for about a half of a row. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through exactly what I do from this point forward. I did my drag and drop, so I've dragged, dropped, and now I am, if we want to go down to the quilt, you can see this is the previous row. I only have this much room before I get to the leader. So I know that I only have room because this is a pretty wide design for about half of the design. Now, that being said, I also want to share real quick that at the bottom of the quilt, I do not take out all of my pins to base because that came up in one of our questions too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to the end and I'm going to show you how I'm going to base this, and then we'll get started on the cropping. Okay, so I'm here. Lock. I've got my sides basted. I'm going to come down. I'm going to take out about 3 or 4 pins at a time. And the reason that I'm only going to be doing 3 or 4 pins at a time is because that's going to keep this nice and straight, and it's going to help me not get any fullness all the way to the end. So I'm working in my fullness as I do it. As I base, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing with my 2 fingers. That's what I use. You can do it like this. And I'm pulling down, but I'm not pulling down in a way this way. I'm pulling into the needle. Now, this particular piecer is excellent at piecing. So I know that there's not a lot of fullness, but if there was a lot of fullness, I would change my stitch length from 12 stitches per inch to 4 or 5 stitches per inch. But with this quilt, I know I can get away with 5. So I'm going to pull that down and away, leave this area, and I'm just going to gently pull that down so it's nice and even. Now, I know her piecing's good enough. I could use the channel lock on this, but there's a little bit of distortion at the bottom of this particular quilt, so that's not going to work. But it's literally only off like about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch from one side to the other, which is not a big deal. So I'm going to just guide this, pull it taut, and I'm just going to kind of visually look at it. Now right here, there's a seam that goes up, so I'm going to go up there. And I always like to have that basting line down there. It makes it a lot easier for the client to bind the quilt. Okay, so now I'll take out a few more pins. Sometimes if I have a really full quilt, I might only take 1 or 2 pins out at a time. But with this one, I can actually do a little bit more. And I am a pinner. Some of you use the red snappers or the leader grips. If I did use the red snappers or the leader grips, I'd get the little minis so that way I can remove a little bit at a time rather than the big long sections. Now, I missed a little spot over here. I'm simply going to pick that up, And as I'm basting, I'm staying within about 1/8 of an inch of the edge, so I know that it's going to be covered by binding. Now there are a lot of different ways to do this, and there are instructors that'll show you a ton of different versions of how they do this, and frankly none of them are wrong. You have to find the way that works best for you. I kind of do this way because it's how Handy Quilter taught me originally, and I like it. I'm used to it. I don't really need to figure out something that's original to me and go exotic on this. Okay, so now I have basted the edge, and now I will come back down and I'll walk you through the process of how I crop from the full quilt design the bottom of this quilt. Okay, so we have this much left. As I said before, we've basted the bottom of the quilt. I only need about half of the row, even though on this quilt I have a lot of extra backing. Sometimes you have a quilt where you only have a few inches of backing, or you need to really trim it right down as close to the edge as you can get. So let me take you there. Let's go up to the screen. So you can see from my crosshairs there, I'm going to move my machine kind of where I'm at. As the design moves through, I'm going to come down to the bottom of the quilt just to show you I only need half of that row. So normally I get rid of my pink line before I start. I didn't today. I'm going to show you as I go through this process how I get rid of that at this point. So the next thing I want to do is I've been working down the quilt. Do you see your long jump pause? Before I crop the bottom, because it's going to just normally continue and do a full row, this would still be here. I need to get rid of that. The reason that I need to get rid of that is now, as you saw on the screen, all of these buttons became operable. So on the ribbons, now we can actually utilize this to redefine a new portion of the area. So what I'm going to do is this. If we go down to the quilt, I'm going to just verbally tell you what I'm going to do, and then we'll go back to the screen. So let's get over there at the edge there. I'm going to bring my machine needle over here. I always go about 3 or 4 inches higher into that previous row before I start to define that area. And then I would hit my 2-point on my area. Now you'll see what I do on the screen in just a minute. And then I'm going to have the camera follow me. I'm going to go down here, and again it's just like that diagonal 2-point. I'm going to come down here, and I like to go about 1/2 of an inch to an inch lower than the bottom of the quilt, and I go ahead and come about 1/2 of an inch or an inch wider, and I'm going to hit my second of my 2-point area again. Before I go any further, what I want to do is I'm going to get rid of that pink frame. I always get rid of that. I didn't today. I don't know why. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go up to area, and I'm going to hit clear. And notice how that gets rid of that. Now, my design and my quilting space is all still there. Everything's there except for that crazy pink line that makes me crazy. So that's all I did. So everything's good at this point. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how I define the area that I'm going to crop. So now what I want to do is I'm going to take my machine and I'm going to go all the way over here, and I want to go up into the design. Now the one thing to remember as well, this design pretty much doesn't overlap or underlap at all, but if you have one that undulates and you have a next row that tucks in there, you want to make sure wherever that high point is in that design that you go a few inches higher than that. Okay, you can go as high as you want within your throat space. That doesn't matter. So I'm going to go about there. I know that I'm good. I'm good on being able to clear the left side of my quilt. And I'm going to go up to the screen and I'm going to hit either 2-point there, or I'm going to use my handlebar. My star is my 2-point for area. And notice I have my area highlighted from where I cleared it before, the pink line. Okay, and you heard the little sound effect. Now I'm going to take the machine, I'm going to go down to the bottom of the quilt, and I'm going to slide down and all the way over, because we're doing 2-point. I'm going to pause there. We'll look at the screen, or we don't have to do that. You can see I'm going to hit that star again. And what just happened was now I have a 2-point area. Let me come down towards you. Okay, and let's look at that screen. You can see that area is now defined in the midst of the complete design. So now I have to get rid of what I don't want. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit modify. And then normally I'd hit crop, but it's already highlighted. Then I'm going to go out here, because what do I want to get rid of? Do I want to get rid of the inside or the outside? Well, obviously I want to get rid of all the outside. So I hit outside. But that leaves all of that shrapnel, all of those points. So I want to clean those edges. So I'm going to hit edges. And that way it's going to sew a straight line when I do the bottom portion of the quilt. Now the one thing that I want to share here is we have part of the row that's already quilted, and then also we have the crop portion of the next row that's actually the row that we're going to be quilting right now. So that's what we have showing. Now, the next thing I always want to do, in case, God forbid, I lose power or something weird happens or my machine has a motor error or something like that, is I want to hit baseline. Once I hit baseline, I want to resave this cropped version as a separate version. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go up here, I'm going to hit File, Save, and I save workspaces. I know a lot of people do it differently, but I like to save workspaces. So I'm going to hit Workspace. Now, this is the complete design. That's the number that comes up. I like to go ahead, push that, and add a few letters so that it saves it as a separate file. I hit Save. So now this file is now saved, so I'm covered in case something bizarre happens. Okay, so now I have this section there. Now, as I said before, I don't need this pink area line, and it annoys me. So I'm going to go to Area and hit Clear. Never clear all, but Area first, Clear, and that just got rid of that pink line. I also like to do that because in case there's any shrapnel around the outer edge, I would have caught that. And then I could have redone it using the original. Okay, but now we have our previous partial row and then the row we actually want to quilt. Well, obviously, I don't want to re-quilt what I've already quilted. So what I do is I go to Pro Stitcher, New Start and End, because I don't want it to start with that partial row. I then come down here and I go to Jumps, but I do it under the Start. Notice the two columns. Start column, End column. And this is for the starting point, which would be the green starts. And then, of course, the end would be the reds. So I'm always going to stick with just the start. I don't think I've ever done anything with the end, with doing an edge to edge. So I'm going to go to Start. I don't want to push anything other than down here in this little extra box that says Jumps, because this will jump rows. If I use this section and jump forward, it's going to micro jump. It's going to jump every point in the design. I don't want to take that hour to do that. I want to just go down to the next row. To do that, I go down here to jumps. I go to the down arrow on this part and I hit that, and notice how it changed my start from the partial row on top that we've already done down to the next row, which is the last row on the quilt. Excuse me. Now what I'm going to do is it grayed out the run button. So I need to go up here and hit quilt, and that brought to life the run button again. And so now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hit run. My needle is up. We always want needle up. We never want needle down unless you're dragging and dropping. And then you'll see go down to the quilt. Okay, it took its first stitch. Pull up. I'm going to grab a hold of my bobbin. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit my resume. It's going to go over, take its lock stitches. I like a lot of lock stitches. It's going to do is pause to trim the tail. Now I go ahead and I hit resume again. And now as this quilt, we'll film a little bit, but you'll see that when it comes down here, it's going to cut off down here where it would have come all the way down to complete the full row. Okay, and there you can see it goes about a ½ inch past the bottom of the quilt. And instead of stopping and dragging thread, because I hit edges, it actually just does a sew line. Once in a very rare blue moon, and we're talking maybe one out of every few hundred, it'll do some weird kind of pause thing and I just have to hit resume. But normally it does exactly what you see now, which is it completes the design and does a sew line across the bottom as it moves to the next section like that and heads up. And that is how I crop my design for the bottom of a quilt. Again, there are folks out there that have some amazing alternate ways to do this. This is just what I've always done and it works fantastic for me. It never fails for me. So here you can really see we're coming to the end of the row on that partial design. And this particular design is called Wood Sprite. And we'll put a crawl across the screen where it's from. Okay, we're coming to our close. Finishing that last little section. All right, so now I'm gonna push away, grab my thread, come back, pick up my bobbin, give it a little tug, trim, and there we have our partial row. And that, my friends, is how I crop the bottom of an edge to edge using the Pro Stitcher. Again, that is version 537. So I hope that helps for the folks that asked if we would do a separate one on just the cropping of the bottom of an edge to edge. And as always, thank you so much for spending your time here at the studio, and take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you all down the road. Goodbye, everybody.